There's a particular kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones after a crowded room. Not the satisfying ache of a good workout, or the gentle tiredness after meaningful work. This is different. This is the weight of 1,000 unspoken observations, the residue of navigating invisible currents that seem to flow around everyone else but crash directly into you. Picture this. You walk into a family gathering, a work party, maybe a friend's celebration. The room pulses with energy, laughter bouncing off walls, conversations overlapping like waves, the air thick with cologne and anticipation. Others seem to plug into this energy like it's a charging station for their souls. They lean in, voices rising, gestures expanding, drawing life from the collective buzz. But you feel something else entirely. It's as if there's an invisible meter inside you, and with each passing minute, each burst of laughter, each competing conversation, the needle drops lower and lower until you're running on fumes, searching for the door, the bathroom, anywhere that offers a moment of silence. And then comes the question that has probably haunted you for years. Is something wrong with me? Let me tell you something that might change everything. You're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're not cold or distant or any of the other labels that have been carelessly thrown your way. You possess a different kind of wiring, a more finely tuned instrument that picks up on frequencies others miss. Think of it this way: if most people are AM radios, content with the mainstream stations, you're a sophisticated receiver catching shortwave transmissions from around the world, the static that others filter out without thinking. It all comes through for you, clear as day. This sensitivity, let's call it what it really is, isn't a defect to be fixed. It's a different way of experiencing the world, one that comes with both profound gifts and real challenges. When this difference is understood and respected, it becomes a wellspring of creativity, depth, and authentic presence. You notice the slight tremor in someone's voice when they say they're fine. You catch the split-second grimace before the practiced smile. You feel the emotional weather changing in a room before anyone else even notices the clouds gathering. But here's where things get complicated. When this sensitivity is misunderstood, mocked, or when you've learned to see it only as a liability, it morphs into something else entirely. It becomes isolation wearing the mask of self-protection. It transforms into loneliness disguised as independence. The very quality that could connect you more deeply to the world becomes the wall that keeps you separate from it. You learned to adapt before you even understood what you were adapting to. Maybe it started in childhood, the birthday party where you hid in the coat room, the family reunions where you found yourself gravitating toward the family pet instead of your cousins, the classroom where you could barely think straight because of the fluorescent lights humming and 30 different energies bouncing around the room. Your body knew before your mind did. This is too much. So you developed strategies, didn't you? The careful smile that says, "I'm fine," while your shoulders turn to stone. The bathroom breaks that aren't really about the bathroom, but about stealing 5 minutes of blessed quiet. The excuses crafted with the precision of a master jeweler, plausible enough to avoid questions, vague enough to use repeatedly. "I have an early morning. I'm not feeling well. Something came up." And after each gathering, each forced interaction, you'd return home feeling like you'd run a marathon in dress clothes. The recovery time, oh the recovery time. While others seemed to bounce back instantly, ready for the next social adventure, you needed hours, sometimes days, to feel like yourself again, to shake off the residual noise, the energetic debris that clung to you like smoke after a bonfire. This is where I want to be crystal clear about something, because the world has probably confused you about this for too long. There's a profound difference between solitude and loneliness, between healthy boundaries and defensive walls. Solitude real, nourishing solitude is medicine. It's the conscious choice to step back, to breathe, to return to your own frequency. It's sitting with a book while rain taps at your window. It's a solo walk where your thoughts can finally finish their sentences. It's the restoration that comes from not having to perform, translate, or manage anyone else's energy. Loneliness is something else entirely. Loneliness is disconnection, even especially when you're surrounded by people. It's the ache of being unseen, unknown, even by those who claim to love you. It's the price you pay when the protection becomes a prison, when the boundaries become so rigid that nothing can get in or out. And then there's your particular operating system, this heightened sensitivity to stimulation that isn't a character flaw or a weakness to overcome. Research in sensory processing and neurodiversity tells us that about 15 to 20% of the population experiences the world through this more sensitive lens. Your nervous system literally processes information differently. It's not imagination or Drummer White's biology. You're not making it up when a room feels too loud, even when others seem fine. Your system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, taking in more information, processing it more deeply, and yes, getting overwhelmed when there's simply too much. The problem isn't your sensitivity. The problem is a world that reads your need for quiet as rudeness, your depth as intensity, your careful observation as judgment. The problem is when you internalize these misreadings and start believing them yourself. When you start apologizing for needing what you need. When you begin to see your own nature as something to overcome rather than something to understand and honor. Think about it. How many times have you forced yourself to stay at a party long past your comfort zone just to avoid seeming difficult? How many times have you said yes when every cell in your body was screaming no? How many relationships have you maintained at a surface level because going deeper would require an energy you simply don't have after navigating the daily assault of overstimulation? The exhaustion you feel isn't just physical, it's existential. It's the bone-deep weariness that comes from constantly translating yourself into a language the world understands, from turning down your own volume so others won't be disturbed by your silence. It's the fatigue of perpetual performance, of being on when your natural state is something quieter, something more internal. But here's what I know to be true, what I want you to carry with you as we dive deeper into this exploration. Your sensitivity is not your enemy. The world needs what you have, the depth, the observation, the ability to hold space for subtlety in a world drunk on extremes. The challenge isn't to become someone else, someone louder or more social or better at small talk. The challenge is to find the sweet spot where protection doesn't become isolation, where boundaries don't become barriers, where you can honor your nature without apologizing for it. The journey ahead isn't about fixing yourself. You were never broken. It's about understanding the difference between the armor that serves you and the armor that's become so heavy you can barely move. It's about learning when stepping back is self-care and when it's fear driving the car. It's about reclaiming your right to exist in the world as you are, not as you think you should be. Imagine discovering a volume dial inside yourself, not metaphorically, but as real as the ache in your shoulders after a long day. The first time you found it, it saved you. Turning it down meant the chaos softened to a whisper. Suddenly, you could think in complete sentences again. Your breath came easier, deeper. The world shifted from assault to approach. That dial became your secret superpower, your way of surviving in a world that seemed permanently set to 11. But here's what nobody tells you about survival mechanisms. They're brilliant solutions to temporary problems that somehow become permanent residents in your life. That volume dial you discovered, it started as liberation, but slowly, imperceptibly, became something else. When you keep it turned down to nearly zero, when every interaction is muted, every connection filtered through layers of protection, you don't just miss the noise, you miss the music too. the laughter that could have warmed you, the conversation that might have changed you, the connection that could have seen you, really seen you. Let me paint you a picture of how this shows up in your body, because your body keeps the score in ways your mind tries to ignore. You walk into a crowded restaurant, a networking event, even a family dinner. Within minutes, the base of your skull starts its familiar complainter, dull ache, spreading like ink through water. Sounds begin to layer and multiply until individual voices dissolve into an oppressive wall of noise. Your eyes, without conscious instruction, map every exit. Your breathing goes shallow, as if taking up less space might make you less visible. Your shoulders creep toward your ears, creating a fortress of tension. Then comes the dissociation, that strange trick where you're physically present but mentally evacuated. You watch yourself from a distance, performing the expected gestures, saying the right words, but you're not really there. You're floating somewhere above, waiting for it to end. Some call it checking out. I call it your psyche's escape hatch when the volume dial isn't enough. The aftermath is its own particular torture. The next morning, your body feels like you've been in a minor car accident. Everything aches with a fatigue that sleep doesn't touch. But worse than the physical exhaustion is the emotional hangover. The guilt that floods in because you cancelled last minute, again. The shame that whispers you're too difficult, too sensitive, too much and not enough all at once. The story you tell yourself, I'm the problem. Everyone else manages fine. But let me tell you what's actually happening here. You're not difficult, you're navigating a world without volume control while carrying a finely tuned instrument. Imagine being a violinist forced to perform in a heavy metal concert. The issue isn't your violin, it's the complete mismatch between your instrument and the venue. The environment lacks regulation, not you. Those habits you've developed, hovering near doorways, choosing corner seats, scheduling buffer time between commitments, preferring texts to phone calls, these aren't character flaws or social failures. They're tools, sophisticated strategies your intelligent system developed to protect something precious. Your capacity to feel, to process, to experience depth in a world increasingly satisfied with surfaces. Tools aren't sins, but tools without boundaries, without conscious choice about when to use them and when to set them down, become chains. Let me tell you about someone who knew exactly what it felt like when the volume dial wasn't enough, when even turning everything down to zero couldn't stop the world from crushing in. His name was Elijah, and his story reads like a page torn from your own exhaustion diary, written 3,000 years before you were born. Picture this. Elijah had just pulled off the impossible. He'd stood against 450 prophets, called down fire from heaven, ended a 3-year drought. The crowd cheered. God showed up. Victory was complete. You'd think he'd be riding high, invincible, finally validated. Instead, one death threat from Queen Jezebel, one more demand on his already depleted reserves. And this mighty prophet did what you've probably done 100 times. He ran. Not in cowardice, but in the bone-deep recognition that he had nothing left to give. He fled to the wilderness, to the vast silence of the desert, and collapsed under a broom tree that's scraggly, barely their shelter that offers just enough shade to survive. And there, this man who'd commanded heaven itself, prayed for something you might recognize. I've had enough, Lord. Let me disappear. Let me stop existing in this too loud, too demanding world. Have you ever whispered something similar in your car after leaving another overwhelming gathering? Have you ever sat in a parking lot, engine off, unable to face even your own home because it meant transitioning from one performance to another? What happened next matters. Elijah slept that deep, body shut down sleep of complete depletion. An angel touched him, offered bread and water, not advice, not criticism, Not a pep talk about getting back out there. Just sustenance. Just care. He ate, then slept again. This wasn't weakness. This was a nervous system so overloaded it needed to power down completely, repeatedly, just to begin functioning again. Then came 40 days of walking deeper into the wilderness, until he found a cave. Stop and feel that for a moment. A cave. The ultimate volume turned to zero space. Dark, enclosed, separate from every demand and expectation. Elijah didn't crawl into that cave because he was broken. He crawled in because he was human, and humans have limits, despite what our always and culture keeps insisting. And God came looking, but not in the way you'd expect. First came wind that shattered rocks, the kind of overwhelming force Elijah had fled from. Then an earthquake that shook the mountain, more chaos, more intensity. Then fire consuming, demanding, spectacular. But God wasn't in any of these loud, dramatic displays. It was only in what came after. A still, small voice. A whisper. The divine showing up at a volume that a depleted nervous system could actually receive. Do you see yourself in this? After all the noise, all the performing, all the overwhelming stimulation, your soul can only register what arrives gently, without assault, without demand. The whisper that doesn't require you to strain. The presence that doesn't need you to be on. This is what Elijah discovered in his cave. Not that God had abandoned him in his exhaustion, but that the divine knew how to match his capacity to meet him in the silence. The cave where Elijah found refuge wasn't just a physical space, it was the external representation of something every sensitive soul creates internally. But how do we build these caves? How does a child learn to turn down the volume before they even know there's a dial? Let me walk you through the architecture of protection. The blueprint your younger self drew without realizing they were holding the pencil. Every belief you carry about yourself started as an experience, repeated until it became truth. Maybe you grew up in a house where chaos was the default setting, voices overlapping, TV blaring, siblings fighting, no door to close, no corner quiet enough to hear your own thoughts. Or perhaps it was the opposite kind of noise, the silent treatment that screamed louder than any argument, the emotional explosions that came without warning, the eggshells you learned to walk on until tiptoeing became your natural gait. Stop being so sensitive. How many times did you hear that? You're too quiet. Why can't you be more like your sister? What's wrong with you? Each dismissal, each criticism, each moment your reality was invalidated became a brick in the wall you built around your true self. Your young mind, brilliant in its survival instinct, drew conclusions. Feeling deeply is dangerous. Being myself invites rejection. If I disappear enough, maybe I won't bother anyone. These childhood conclusions became adult strategies. You became a master of the Irish goodbye, disappearing from parties without fanfare, an expert at being present but not really there, your body in the room while your mind floats somewhere safer. You accept invitations with every intention of going, then cancel at the last minute when your body starts its familiar revolt. You've perfected the art of looking engaged while being completely disconnected, nodding at the right moments while your soul has already left the building. But here's what neuroscience tells us about your exquisite sensitivity. You're not imagining it. Research in sensory processing shows that roughly 1 in 5 people are born with nervous systems that quite literally process information more deeply. Dr. Elaine Aron's groundbreaking work on highly sensitive persons reveals that your brain shows more activation in areas associated with deeper processing, particularly in the insula, the part that integrates moment-to-moment awareness. You're not being dramatic when a room feels overwhelming. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, taking in more data. processing it more thoroughly, and yes, reaching overload faster when there's simply too much. Think of it this way. If most people have a coffee filter for processing stimulation, you have a HEPA filter catching every particle, every subtlety, every emotional undercurrent. It's magnificent for depth and creativity. It's exhausting in a world that never stops pouring. The research on attachment and nervous system regulation explains even more. When early caregiving is consistent and attuned, when a child's needs for both connection and quiet are respected, they develop what Dr. Dan Siegel calls a window of tolerance, the ability to handle life's ups and downs without losing equilibrium. But when that early environment is chaotic, dismissive, or unpredictable, the window narrows. The nervous system learns hypervigilance as its default mode. This is why you might feel on edge even in safe situations. Your body remembers danger in the absence of regulation. Now that we understand how these patterns formed, let's turn the mirror toward your present life. I want to ask you 3 questions, not to judge, but to illuminate. Think of them as a flashlight in a dark room, helping you see what's been there all along. First, where have you said "I'm fine" while your body screamed otherwise? Maybe last week at dinner when your shoulders turned to granite, but you smiled through dessert. Perhaps in that meeting where your heart raced while you nodded calmly. Your body never lies, even when your words do. It keeps an honest record of every betrayal, every time you override its wisdom for the sake of social smoothness. Second, in which relationship do you mistake your silence for peace? There's someone in your life, we both know, where you've learned to shrink yourself so small that absence feels like harmony. You call it keeping the peace, but peace doesn't require you to disappear. Real peace has room for your whole self, not just the edited version you've learned to present. Third, which invitation did you decline from legitimate self-care, and which from the terror of being seen as difficult or strange? There's a difference between honoring your limits and being controlled by fear of judgment. One is wisdom. The other is a prison you carry everywhere. If any of these questions land with a sting, that's not failure, that's recognition. Your body knows the truth, even when your mind tries to negotiate with it. Let me map the daily signals your system sends. The ones you might dismiss as just being difficult. Your body has a whole vocabulary you've maybe never learned to read. That tension headache that blooms in crowded spaces. That's not weakness, that's your nervous system saying too much input. The way your shoulders creep toward your ears in meetings, creating an armor of muscle, that's protection. The sudden inability to track a single conversation when multiple people talk at once, like trying to follow one raindrop in a storm. That's sensory overload, not rudeness. Watch yourself at the next gathering. You check the time obsessively, not because you're bored, but because you're rationing your energy. You position yourself near windows and doors, escape routes, disguised as seating preferences. You volunteer for tasks, getting ice, checking on the kids, helping in the kitchen because movement gives you purpose and distance gives you breath. These aren't social failures. They're brilliant adaptations. But here's what else is true. You have medicine that works. Books don't just entertain you, they regulate you, offering a world where the volume is exactly right. Solo walks aren't exercise, they're rehabilitation, letting your thoughts unspool at their own pace, without interruption. Prayer or meditation doesn't just connect you to something greater, it returns you to yourself, to that still center that gets lost in the noise. Sometimes, and this is crucial to understand, you need a full day of solitude to recover from 3 hours of socializing, not because you're antisocial, but because depth requires recovery time. You might look calm on the outside, while inside feels like 50 radios tuned to different stations, all playing at once. This isn't dysfunction. This is the cost of feeling deeply in a world that skims, surfaces, Here's the paradox that keeps so many of us stuck. The very qualities that protect us, our ability to be alone, to listen to ourselves, to not need the crowd's approval, these same gifts become cages when fear and shame slip in through the back door. What once saved you might now be suffocating you. The medicine became the poison when you forgot the dosage. Think about it. Solitude was supposed to be your sanctuary, but somewhere along the way, it morphed into isolation. The boundary that kept you safe became a wall so high that even love needs a ladder to reach you. The volume dial that helped you survive got stuck at near zero, and now you're missing the symphonies along with the static. But here's what I need you to hear. You don't have to choose between drowning in stimulation or living in permanent exile. There's a third way, a middle path that honors your sensitivity without letting it become your prison. It starts with tiny steps, so small they might seem insignificant. But transformation doesn't always announce itself with earthquakes. Sometimes it arrives in whispers, just like God did for Elijah. First micro step: revolutionize how you speak about yourself. Language shapes reality, and you've been using words like weapons against yourself. I'm too difficult becomes, my nervous system is more finely tuned, I function best with less noise and more pause. I'm antisocial transforms into I connect deeply with fewer people rather than superficially with many. Write this on your mirror, tattoo it on your heart. This isn't weakness. This is how I'm wired. Say it until your bones believe it. Second micro step: become an architect of your environment. You have more power than you think. Arrive early to claim the corner seat with the escape route. Take those bathroom breaks that are really breathing breaks. Stand outside for 5 minutes at parties, call it getting fresh air if anyone asks. Choose restaurants with booths over open floor plans. Meet friends for walks instead of crowded coffee shops. You're not being demanding, you're being strategic. You can negotiate with the world instead of surrendering to it. Third micro step: protect your calendar like it's a sacred text. Buffer days aren't luxury, they're necessity. If Friday night is a wedding, Saturday morning stays empty. Block out recovery time and name it appointment if anyone asks. You wouldn't run 2 marathons back to back. Stop scheduling your life like endurance sport. You don't need to prove your worth by exhausting yourself. Fourth micro step: curate connections with the precision of a museum curator. To soul friends who see you trump 50 acquaintances who drain you. Practice these honest scripts until they feel natural. I love being with you, could we meet somewhere quieter? If I get quiet, I'm processing, not disconnecting. I need solo time to recharge. It's not about you. It's about me functioning well. I can come for an hour and leave when I need to. These aren't excuses, they're instructions for loving you well. Fifth micro step: learn the difference between self-care and self-sabotage. Write it down. Situations where stepping back serves you versus situations where fear is driving. Notice when protection becomes paralysis. Sometimes the cave is medicine. Sometimes it's becoming your grave. Let's return to Elijah's cave one more time, but now with fresh eyes. Notice what actually brought him out. It wasn't a motivational speech about getting back in the game. It wasn't shame about hiding while others fought. It wasn't even a divine command to stop being so sensitive. What brought him back was care, simple, patient, undemanding care. Food when he was hungry, sleep when he was exhausted, a presence that could hold silence without needing to fill it. And when he finally emerged, he didn't return as someone else, some louder, more social version of himself. He returned as Elijah, rested. Elijah, heard. Elijah, still sensitive, but no longer shattered. This is your permission slip, written in ancient history and divine understanding. You don't need to become the life of the party to have a life worth living. You don't need to transform into an extrovert to deserve connection. The world doesn't need another person pretending to be energized by chaos. The world needs exactly what you offer when you're operating from fullness instead of depletion. That rare ability to notice what others miss, to hold depth while others skim surfaces, to offer presence instead of performance. Your cave moments, those times when you withdraw, when you need silence, like others need air, these aren't failures or weaknesses. They're recalibration. They're your system's intelligent way of saying, I need to remember who I am without all this noise. The cave isn't the end of your story any more than it was the end of Elijah's. It's the comma, not the period. The deep breath before the next sentence. And here's what that whisper, that still, small voice that found Elijah teaches us. The divine doesn't always shout. Sometimes the most profound truths arrive at the exact volume your depleted nervous system can receive. You don't need more stimulation to be found. You need presences in your life that know how to match your frequency, that can sit with you in the quiet without mistaking it for emptiness. I know what they've called you. Cold, aloof, party pooper, antisocial, boring, no fun. I know how you've internalized these labels until they became the story you tell yourself at 2 a.m. when sleep won't come. Maybe you've even added your own harsh edits. Weird, broken, too much, not enough. But today, right now, I see you differently. I see someone whose nervous system is calibrated to a different frequency. Not wrong, just different. I see someone who's been trying to survive in a world set to 11 when your comfort zone is a gentle 3. I see someone who's been apologizing for needing what they need instead of honoring it. You're not cold. You're selective with your warmth because you know it's precious. You're not antisocial. You're prosocial in a way that values depth over breadth, when your sensitivity is respected by others, but more importantly, by yourself. Something remarkable happens. Your depth becomes a gift. Your ability to notice subtlety becomes wisdom. Your capacity for genuine presence becomes the rare treasure it actually is. You become the person others seek when they need someone who can hold complexity without simplifying it, who can witness pain without rushing to fix it, who can offer silence that heals rather than words that merely fill space. So here we are, at the edge of everything we've explored together, standing where Elijah stood after his encounter with the whisper, not transformed into someone else, but returned to himself with deeper understanding. Let me weave together the threads we've been following, because the pattern they create is your map forward. Solitude is medicine you choose. Loneliness is poison that chooses you. Protection is the boundary that makes life possible. Prison is the fear that makes life impossible. These aren't just word games, they're the difference between thriving in your sensitivity and drowning in it. You're not broken for craving silence any more than a plant is broken for needing soil. You deserve to learn the art of self-care without self-abandonment, of drawing boundaries without building walls, of protecting your peace without vanishing from your own life. I want to give you 3 anchoring phrases to carry forward, like smooth stones in your pocket, each one a touchstone when the world tries to convince you that your needs are too much. First, what once protected me might now be imprisoning me. This is your reminder to check whether you're choosing from wisdom or from wound. Second, this isn't weakness, this is how I'm wired. Let this be your response to every voice, internal or external, that shames your sensitivity. Third, I can protect myself without disappearing. Because protection and presence aren't opposites, they're dance partners. When you learn the steps, listen, I know how the world has read you. Many people who prefer silence and feel displaced in crowded environments aren't cold or antisocial. They have a different way of recharging and perceiving the world. When this difference is respected, It becomes a source of profound depth, extraordinary creativity, and authentic presence. When it's attacked, ridiculed, or used only as escape from social fears, it morphs into loneliness, guilt, and a crushing sense of inadequacy. But you get to choose which story unfolds from here, not through massive transformation or personality overhaul, but through the smallest acts of self-honor. Choose one tiny gesture in the next 24 hours. Send that text suggesting a quiet coffee shop instead of the noisy bar. Block out 30 minutes of silence like it's a meeting with your soul's CEO. Decline that invitation that would leave you depleted, and do it without apology or elaborate excuse. Just, "That won't work for me, but thank you." Then notice your breathing afterward. Notice how your shoulders drop when you honor your truth instead of betraying it. Notice how the world doesn't end when you say no. Notice how the right people, your people, will understand and adjust, while the others were never yours to keep anyway. If this exploration has stirred something deep, something that feels too heavy to carry alone, consider reaching out for professional support. There's no shame in needing a guide through the wilderness. 7 Elijah had his angel. Remember the whisper that found Elijah in his cave, the divine presence that didn't shout or demand but simply met him where he was. That same gentle presence is available to you in the quiet spaces you create, in the boundaries you honor, in the silence you've been taught to fear but which actually holds your deepest truth. You don't need more noise to be found. You need the courage to believe that your whisper matters as much as anyone's shout.